to check it out for yourself. I want to introduce our two facilitators tonight as well. I also want to introduce Clifton Johnson, who's currently a student at Penn State Harrisburg, was a student at Penn State York, is a rap artist, and we're very pleased to have him here as well. So I think the first thing that we're going to do is to watch a little kind of introductory clip, and then after that, our two facilitators are going to really ask you your thoughts and opinions and get a little dialogue going about what we're seeing.
I just want to, touch base on what Jason just mentioned. When hip-hop started, I would definitely have to say, especially towards, like the 80s, maybe late 70s, where it actually got into effect, but it actually ground broke towards the late 80s. But when hip-hop first started, it was definitely, the opportunity for those who came from, inner city neighborhoods, urban youth, and things of that nature, for them to have a voice. And what it was that you had few individuals that were able to, articulate the words into a style in which everyone was able to adapt to, and everybody was able to actually hear the messages. And what they were talking about were the things that a lot of people from the inner cities couldn't say. And I think that maybe, especially with the videos we're saying, about everybody, wanting to be the hardest, or you got to be harder than the next man, a lot of that happened towards, moving into the 90s, where you had artists such as NWA coming out. And not necessarily saying that it was something wrong with what they were doing, because of the fact that it was monumental. It's some of the greatest to ever break through hip-hop. But what it did was that it had people, instead of saying, well, Dad, this is what's going on the West Coast, it had people say, you know what, I want to live the life in which they live. And now what's become is that even if you don't live that lifestyle, you want everyone to think that you live that lifestyle. So it's basically about everybody swinging their own ego, where one rapper comes out and says, well, I'm hard. The next rapper has to say, well, I'm even harder. And the next rapper, I got shot 9 times, so that proves that I'm harder. And the next rapper has to say something else. It's just basically an ego going back and forth. And I think that that's one of the most unfortunate things that's happening in hip-hop right now, is that people, creating false realities, or matrix, so to say, in which they're basically trying to have everybody believe in which they live in, but in reality, that's not the case. I want to try to get away where we could get, more audience involvement. As, it was just said, a lot of it is what comes from, what area you come from. Hip-hop started with urban communities. What I want to know is how many people, throughout the room, show of hands, come from what most people would call a lower income community or urban area. Just show of hands how people think that they fit that classification and come from the type of area. Those that have their hands up, what's that area? Where you from?
I grew up in Philadelphia.
Philadelphia. What else we got?
Baltimore.
Baltimore. What else we got around here? Bronx, New York. What else we got? Baltimore. What else we got? Brooklyn, New York. Anybody else? Brooklyn? New York. I can see that. One thing I want to, try to get a little bit better understanding on is, just hypothetically speaking, Brooklyn. I don't even think I know that you already had to stand up and but I wanted to ask you a question. Say, for instance, that we're walking down the street. We're both New Yorkers. I'm from Harlem, New York, so I know we got to understand it. But we're walking down the street, and I walk past you. Don't say anything, don't touch you, anything. But I stare at you directly in your eye. What's the first thought that comes to your mind?
What?
My fault. What happened?
I don't know. You're about to do something. I'm going to stay back.
All right. See, it's a mentality that develops. Baltimore. If you're in a party and somebody bumps you, what's the first thing that comes to your mind?
I'm going to push them.
You're going to push them back.
Yeah.
It's that's the mentality what you were talking about as far as the video was saying, it's about I have to be harder than the next man, where if you get bumped, it's automatically a psychological impulse that goes to your head that's saying, I now feel infuriated because of the fact that I got bumped. And even more so, if you're around a particular crowd or area, because most people that grow up in inner city neighborhoods, they definitely have a group of friends which they decide to associate with. If you get bumped around your friends and you do nothing back, they make it that much harder, where they say, oh, Dad, you're not man enough, or you a punk, or you this and you that, because of the fact that you did nothing. It's that whole sense of inferiority. So now you feel like it's an obligation, not only to yourself, but to those around you to feel comfortable that you have to do something back. And that's when we get into that ego struggle with the video I was talking about. Whereas, this person just basically did something that is what I would call hard. Now I've got to prove myself. And it's that back and forth struggle that results in, so most people would see a lot of violence that go on in some city communities. I know Baltimore is what nicknamed Body More Murder or something like that. It's like that's what actually developed because of it. It's the whole ego that, I've got to prove that I'm harder than somebody else, or I've got to prove this. And unfortunately, when you have a music such as hip-hop that is designed around the urban areas or the music of the streets, that's what's going to be spoke about. And now that same mentality that comes from the streets is saying, well, you know what? Somebody just made $1 million on talking about getting shot 9 times. Some talking about selling drugs. Now all I got to do is not necessarily go out there for 5 years and intern and sell drugs, or go out there for 5 years and fight everybody in sight. All I got to do is be able to talk about it. And once you're able to talk about it, everybody else thinks that you went through it. I know there was a panel discussion called Hip Hop versus America, in which T.I. said, you know, a lot of people are out there talking about the stuff, but I was actually doing out there. Y'all should be happy that I'm talking about it now. But then you got other artists out there that never actually lived the lifestyle, but they're good at talking about something they're nothing about. When you got a multi-million, billion-dollar industry such as hip-hop, and all you got to do is basically create a false reality or lies in order to make money, how many of us are going to turn down $1 million if they ask to talk about guns and girls, to be honest with you? Money is a major issue. I think that's one of the things that stemmed out of this whole mentality of, I've got to be harder than the next man.